When I started, I had some conversations with people at the university who told me, well, I have never seen a disabled person here. Why should we do all this? I had to say, yeah, you can't see a disabled person here because they have no chance to study.
The FOLD Symposium is an event organized by Fulbright Austria alums on a topic of their choice. The 2024 FOLD Symposium, organized by alum Bailey Fernandez, is focused on disability and inclusion. In March 2024, we sat down with Bailey to discuss his experience organizing the event. In this video, Bailey interviews Barbara Levc, the co-founder of the Austrian disability union known as Uniability, and one of 2 keynote speakers at this year's symposium, which will take place in Linz in June.
So, hello Barbara, thank you so much for coming to the interview.
Hello, Bailey. Thank you very much for having me.
I think we should start a little bit by you telling us a little bit about yourself. So, who are you and what is your connection to disability activism in Austria?
I was born in Graz, and when I was in kindergarten, I was diagnosed with a disease of the retina that slowly takes to blindness. So I went through some special schools, and at that time there was no way to do a special school for the blind with high school with a possibility to go to university. So I started with typical jobs like office work, but I had some friends who did their diploma at that time, and I wanted to have that also. So I found a school in the evening for people at work who want to do their, we say, in the second way, the diploma to go to university. And then I studied educational science, and while I was studying, I was more or less working on my own, talking to the teachers with whatever I needed, and it more or less worked out. I had some good friends who read a lot to me, and yes, it was okay. And then there was a group of students with different kinds of disabilities at the University of Graz, and we met, and we thought it would be nice to have some services, not to have to find out everything yourself, to organize everything yourself. And the same happened at that time at other universities in Austria, in Salzburg, in Vienna. Then we had support from some professors from the university, and there was a meeting with the Minister of Science, and it was a good time, I think, because he said, yes, we start with 5 universities with unit for service and counseling for students with disabilities. And I applied for that job, and yeah, fortunately I got it. And that was also the time when I came in contact with the independent living movement in Austria, because at that time, I knew what I needed and what maybe blind and visually impaired people would need, but I wanted to know what others needed and what their issues were. So I met with these groups and made a lot of good friends and learned a lot of things. And we were campaigning at that time for a paragraph in the Austrian constitution that there should be no discrimination is allowed if you have a disability. And that was the first big campaign I was involved in. And yeah, I learned a lot, and it was a very good time.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about that campaign? So What was your involvement in it and how did it start?
I was collecting signs from a lot of people to give to the government to say we need that paragraph because there's a lot of discrimination. People with disabilities can't use trains, can't live where they want. And so that was more or less my role in that. And I was really surprised how many people were with us at that point.
Yeah, and maybe that could lead us to talking more about other areas of activism where you've had a lot of success. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about Uniability and sort of how that started.
Yes, Uniability started when we were starting at the university. I started in 1994, and at that time in Salzburg and in Linz and in Innsbruck, also people started to do this work, and we met through the independent living movement. But then we started our own meetings with our own topics because they needed more time. At the beginning it was to support each other, to exchange informations, and then we wanted to have a brochure for students to have all the basic informations where to get support. And we asked the Ministry of Science for financing, and they said, yeah, they could do it, but only if we have an organization, because they can't give it to one person. So we formed an organization, and that was Uniability. Now we're around 30 or 35 people working together in that network. It is a lot of networking, a lot of exchange of information, but we also get involved in when the logistic developments. Whenever the University Act is going to be changed again, then we have things that we put in, and one or two times we were successful and we got it.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about those one or two things.
Yeah, that's the logistic changes that changed also a lot about, for students with disabilities. It's now possible to make changes in the curriculum if you can't do something because of your disability. Like we have a student, she is deaf and she studies to become a teacher, for German. But to study to become a teacher for German, she has to do a course about speaking, and the students have to listen to someone and then to speak like the person, and of course she can't do that. So she can change this course for another one. But another thing is that since 2022, when you start at university, you have to do a special amount of credits during your first 2 years, and if you don't have those credits, then you can't study that topic for another 2 years. So that's the Mindeststudienleistung, a minimum of credits, and there is also an exception now for students with disabilities because especially at the beginning, there are a lot of new things. Maybe you have to live in a new place. You have to get around to find assistance you need. Technical aids don't work maybe as like they did at school. So there can be a lot of starting difficulties. And so if you have a disability, you don't have to have these credits and can progress your study.
What do you think are the biggest changes, maybe just in Austrian culture in general, from when you started doing this to now?
Well, I think when I started, I had some conversations with people at the university who told me, well, I have never seen a disabled a person here. Why should we do all this? I had to say, yeah, you can't see a disabled person here because they have no chance to study, because there are all stairs all around and no one in the wheelchair can come in, or you don't get your material in a way a blind person can read it. Since that, there were some logistic changes. There is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is very important. There was also the Austrian Act on equality for persons with disabilities, and that did a lot for accessibility. And there was also the development of integration and then inclusion in schools in Austria. Because like me, there was, in my generation, there was no special school where you can, from where you could go to the university. So you had to have parents who were very willing to support you, or a school that was willing to support you, or you couldn't do it. And so with inclusion in schools, there are much more people who have the chance to go to higher education. And well, now they are there, and now they are seen as part of diversity at many universities. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's more common now.
Well, it's good to see, on the one hand, that there are so many positive changes that have occurred. What changes are you still looking to see in Austria?
I'd like to see that at all universities of applied sciences, at all teacher colleges, the same services for students with disabilities. Because now it depends on the leading team, if there is just one person, or if there is a unit, if they have a budget, or if they don't. And what I would really want is a clear regulation for every higher education institution in Austria, to say, if you have what we have in Graz, 25,000 students, you have to employ about at least 3 people in for support for students with disabilities. That's one thing that would be very important. And another thing is more a worry that's getting larger, because we have quite a backlash in inclusion in school right now. Austrian had an evaluation last year about our bringing the UN Convention into life here in Austria, and the evaluation wasn't good at all. But instead of trying to get better, there is a backlash. I see a backlash back to special schools, back to more exclusion, and that's a big worry right now.
Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you at the symposium.
I'm looking forward to the symposium. Thank you so much.